In this week's video, I've been given unrestricted access to Buffalo Trace, one of the world's largest distilleries. But believe it or not, I'm not here for the whiskey. Well, not just for the whiskey. I'm actually here for the woodworking. Whiskey comes from the Gaelic word Ishka Baha, which means water of life. Now, if you ask somebody what makes a good whiskey, you'll get a variety of different answers. Some might say it's that light caramel color, or that heat that hits you in the back of the throat, that smell that emanates from the glass, or that sweet taste that rolls across your tongue. But all those answers are wrong. That might be what defines a good whiskey. But what makes a good whiskey? Well, that's something completely different. You see, there's one undeniable thing that makes a good whiskey. It doesn't start with a bottle or a glass. It actually starts with the wood. White oak, or Quercus alba if you want to sound superior at parties. You see, whiskey just wouldn't be whiskey without white oak. Lots and lots of white oak.
Whiskey barrels are made of white oak, but they don't just go out and clear-cut an entire forest. These trees are selectively harvested to be stave quality, which means they're long, straight, and free of most imperfections. Once the logs arrive at the mill, they're debarked and then cut into uniform lengths, either 24 or 36 inches, depending on whether they'll be used for barrel tops or barrel staves. Once inside the mill, an operator uses a 40-foot bandsaw to perfectly line up the pith of the log and cut it directly in half. This behemoth of a bandsaw runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Its blade is 40 feet long and approximately 6 inches wide with an 1/8-inch kerf. That is one big saw blade. It runs so much that they have to change the blade out every 10 hours. Once each log is sawn in half, it's transitioned down the line where it's quarter sawn. That's right, they're making quarter sawn white oak. Why? Because the long, straight grain of the quarter sawn log is perfect for holding liquid. Continuing down the conveyor belt, each log is reoriented so they're all facing the same direction. Then each log makes its way to yet another bandsaw. This one slices them into boards. But obviously you can get more than one board per quarter of a log. So what does it do after it slices off a nice clean 1-inch thick section? Well, those boards are passed down the line, while the remaining log makes a U-turn back around to the mill operator, where they'll be sliced again and again until there's nothing left. Now sliced to a uniform thickness, each board is passed through a straight line machine, which puts a nice straight edge along one side. Then passed to another operator who again straight lines the opposite side. You now have a board that is S4S, or surfaced on 4 sides. The waste is separated from the good material and it's passed down the line where it's sorted. The smaller pieces that are under 36 inches in length get sent to be stacked on pallets for barrel heads, while the larger pieces are all hand-selected to make sure there aren't any imperfections and stacked on pallets to make staves. Any longer piece with a knot, crack, or deformity is sent down to the barrel head area, because those pieces can be cut down to use as barrel heads. All of the hand-selected pieces are then stacked on pallets and ready to transition to the next stage. So what happens to all the waste from the milling process? Well, I'm glad you asked. That gets sent outside into a chipper. and it's reduced down into little bits of bark and dust. Remember that. It's going to come into play later.
Once the milling process is complete, the aging process can start. And no, I don't mean the aging of the whiskey. We're still a long ways off from that.
Each stacked and stickered pallet of white oak is sent outside to season or age. Here it'll sit for up to 12 months in the Kentucky rain and sunshine, until the moisture content drops to around 30%. When the seasoning process is complete, it's ready to be kiln dried. Oh, and remember all those scrap pieces that were being cut up into mulch? Well, what do you think they used to heat the kiln? Each pallet will kiln dry for up to 7 days until the moisture content is anywhere between 10 and 14%, the perfect percentage for making barrels.
Once the rough milled boards have been properly seasoned and kiln dried, they're ready to be transformed into barrels. You see, I told you this was a woodworking story.
The barrel making process starts with the barrel head. First, each piece is run through this joining machine, which basically puts a double-stepped tongue and groove on each side of the board. You have to remember that barrels are held together without any use of adhesives, so whatever joinery method has to be watertight. Once all the pieces are milled and hooked together into squares, they're sent over to this machine, where the first stage is a bandsaw that cuts each rough square of white oak into a perfect barrel head-sized circle. From there it moves over to a fancy router that puts that classic barrel head profile around the entire outside. Think of it as a double chamfer, one on the top and one on the bottom. From there it gets discarded onto this backlit surface, which allows the operators to check and make sure that no light is passing through even the smallest crack. Because if light can get through, whiskey can get through. Not all the barrel heads make the cut, but instead of discarding them, they're sent through another joining machine and put back into circulation, reattached to another rough block of white oak, and the whole process is started over again until they have a nice uniform barrel head. And then they're ready to be charred. Any surface of the barrel that will come in contact with whiskey has to be charred. This is what gives the whiskey its classic color, and more important, its classic flavor. Then the edge of each barrelhead gets coated with a food-safe wax. This helps ensure that the barrelhead will seal to the outside of the barrel and not allow any whiskey to leak out. And with that, the barrelheads are complete. They move down the line where a robot stacks them, where they will sit and wait to be fitted onto a barrel. The barrel making process starts somewhat similar. Boards are transitioned from the pallets into this machine, which will do 3 things simultaneously. First, it trims the end off of each board, ensuring that every single piece is uniform in length. This is only the first step in getting a uniform barrel. Next, it's surfaced, both on the top and the bottom. This gives each piece that classic barrel profile with a little bit of curve. And third, it adds a 10-degree bevel on both sides. But here's the crazy thing. No one barrel stave is identical in width. They simply make each stave as wide as they can depending on how the board came from the mill. So how do they get a uniform barrel? I asked the exact same question. Next, the staves are stacked into this form on the ground in the factory until they get to the last section. He crisscrosses the pieces to get them all tight in the form, and then he simply searches the stack of staves until he finds the right one that fits. If he gets one that's a little too loose or tight, he pulls out another one. Once he gets a completed barrel, he wraps this cable around to cinch them all together. While the chain is tight, he adds on a metal hoop. This will hold the barrel roughly in position. The barrel is then passed down the line for the next stage in the process. Now you have to remember, at this point, all the barrel staves are still straight. They need to be bent. And how do you bend seasoned wood? Well, you have to put it through a giant steam box. About 50 yards in length, each barrel rides along a conveyor belt, where they're bombarded with a mixture of steam and heat to make the wood pliable. From there, they're immediately put into this machine, where all the staves are simultaneously bent into that classic barrel shape. From here, another metal ring is placed on top to hold the shape. Then the barrel is removed from the machine and transitioned down the line. But if you've ever done steam bending before, you know a piece of wood won't hold its shape until it's been dried. So after being steam bent and formed, all the barrels are passed through a conveyor belt heater to lock in that barrel shape. Once out of the heater, each barrel is taken down the line where they go through a process of quality control. An operator checks the outside of each and every barrel, looking for any sort of crack or defect that might compromise the barrel's ability to hold liquid. And then the barrel keeps moving down the line to this machine. Using a mixture of pressure and centrifugal force, this machine pushes all the staves into perfect alignment. More metal rings are added, then compressed to ensure that the outside surface is as smooth and uniform as possible. And then it's time for my favorite step in the process. Just like the barrel heads, the entire inside of each barrel must be charred. This is what gives the whiskey its flavor and color. And the level of char depends on what the master distiller ordered for that particular batch. The higher the level of char, the higher the potential for flavor transfer from the barrel to the whiskey within. But you have to be careful. If you char too much, you can compromise the strength of the barrel and lose all of your whiskey altogether. Once each barrel has been properly charred, they're put into this machine, which is basically a spinning double router on steroids. It adds that nice little groove at the top and the bottom of both ends of the barrel. That's the lip that will hold the barrel head in place. Next, the original form rings are removed. These are placed onto a convenient ring elevator, where they're transported back to the beginning of the process to be used over again. The entire thing is a giant circle, a non-stop barrel-making machine. But with the form rings removed, new permanent rings must be put in place. And yes, they make those here in the factory as well. Steel is fed off a giant spool into a cutting device that cuts each ring to the perfect length depending on its position on the barrel. Those rings are then passed to a rivet man who drills and rivets each ring to the correct size. He stacks them up and they're ready to be placed onto new barrels. But first, the barrel heads need to be installed on both ends. The barrel's placed in this machine, which slightly opens the top of the barrel, allowing the operator to get the head in place. Once in place, the machine slides down, compressing the top of the barrel, giving enough room for the ring to be installed. Then the machine lifts up and taps the ring into position. This operation is then repeated for the other side of the barrel, but first the barrel is filled with a small amount of water. After all, you can't put a barrel out the door until you've tested to make sure it doesn't leak. With the final barrel head installed, the remaining rings can be put on. Each bourbon barrel will get 6 steel rings in total, ensuring that it will hold its shape, and more importantly, that it will keep holding whiskey. It's hard to believe that all these barrels are watertight, and there's no adhesives and no complex joinery between the staves. Just steel rings and a whole lot of history. With the new steel rings installed, the barrels pass down the line where it will be drilled out with a bung hole. You heard me right. I said bung hole. The position of the bung hole is actually determined by where the rivets land on the barrel. The bunghole must be in line with all the rivets because the rivets are on the widest stave of the barrel. Next, the barrel is pressurized with air. The mixture of air and water on the inside helps the operator do a quality control check, ensuring there are no leaks on the outside of the barrel. If a leak is found, all is not lost. A small leak can be repaired by drilling a hole and filling that hole with a cedar plug, or sometimes cedar wedges are used in small cracks to fill holes. There are actually 3 different types of wood in a whiskey barrel. The barrel itself is oak, any repairs are cedar, and the bung that goes in the hole is made from poplar. Once each barrel has been checked and rechecked, they're ready to serve their ultimate purpose: to be filled with clear spirits and slowly throughout the years transform them into delicious golden brown whiskey.
This video is sponsored by our good friends over at AG1, which is fitting because there's 2 things I love to do in the morning. First, I get my cup of coffee, and then the second part of my daily routine is I drink my AG1. Let me tell you why. You see, AG1 is a daily health drink that combines multivitamins, your pre and probiotics, antioxidants, and superfoods into one little green scoop. AG1 is one of the easiest things that you can do to support your body every day. All you do is take a scoop or a packet of the powder, you mix it with 8 to 12 ounces of water, and you shake it up and enjoy. Now, we've all heard of the original AG1 flavor, which I've always thought is delicious, but now they have 3 new flavors. They got citrus, they got tropical, and they have berry, which is quickly becoming my new favorite. I've been traveling so much for work this year, and I want to be proactive about supporting my immune health. And that's why I love AG1. These travel packets, they're so stinking convenient. I just throw a bunch in my carry-on bag, and then I can pull one out whenever I need it. Every scoop of AG1 works to combat environmental stress, replenish antioxidants, and strengthen the gut, so you can have more feel-good days throughout the year. So if you're curious about adding AG1 to your daily routine, just go to drinkag1.com/bourbonmoth or scan the QR code on the screen right now. Claim your free welcome kit. You'll get a shaker bottle, a bottle of their vitamin D3 plus K2, and a sample packet of all 3 of their new flavors. Try the berry. It's pretty good. Huge thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video. When the Coopers are done building the barrels, they're brought here to Buffalo Trace Distillery in Frankfort, Kentucky, where they're filled. But filled with what exactly? You see, this is where we get to one of America's oldest pastimes. And no, I don't mean baseball. I mean making hooch.
We met up with John Hartman, the operator of Whiskey Woodcraft at the distillery. He took us around to show us how the whiskey is made. Corn, malt, and barley are ground and mixed with water straight out of the Kentucky River. This mixture of grain and water is called a mash, and depending on the specific mixture of the ratio of grains, they make what is known as a mash bill, or a recipe. For it to be considered bourbon, the mash bill must contain at least 51% corn. Once the mash is mixed, it's put into a mash cooker to break down the grain and release sugar. The sugar is essential in the distilling process because it's what feeds the yeast. Yeast eats sugar and produces alcohol. The more sugar for the yeast to eat, the more alcohol a mash will contain. Once the mash is cooked, it has to be cooled down. If the mash is too hot, it'll kill the yeast. The mash is dumped into fermenting tanks where the yeast will eat the sugar and make the alcohol. All the whiskey at Buffalo Trace is made with a sour mash, meaning it's about 70% new sweet mash mixed with around 30% spent mash, or already fermented mash. Once the yeast has consumed all the sugar and the fermentation process is complete, this concoction of grain and water has transformed from a simple mash to what is known as a beer. This beer contains approximately 10% alcohol and is ready to distill. All whiskey at Buffalo Trace is double distilled. First, it's distilled using a column still. This type of still is perfect for mass production because it allows for new mash to be constantly fed into the still while old, already distilled mash is simultaneously taken out. Alcohol vapors are condensed and collected into the first distillation product known as low wine. From there, it's distilled for a second time using a classic pot still. After distilling it in the pot still, the grain alcohol is captured and condensed again, and this product is known as high wine. At this point, it's almost ready to be barreled. The last step is to mix it with filtered water to bring down the alcohol content slightly to anywhere from 114 to 125 proof, depending on what mash bill they are making. Once mixed with water, this clear, somewhat tasteless product known as White Dog is ready to be barreled. Oh yeah. Remember those barrels we saw being made? When a truck full of new barrels arrives from the cooperage, they're unloaded into this warehouse, where they're lined up and ready to be filled with the freshly distilled grain alcohol. Each newly made barrel is transported via conveyor belts to the filling warehouse, where each barrel will be filled and stamped according to whatever mash bill went into that specific barrel. At this point, the liquid entering each barrel is crystal clear. It'll take years of slow aging for the barrel's char to transfer its color and flavor, transitioning the White Dog inside from a clear grain alcohol to a delicious caramel-colored whiskey. Every day at Buffalo Trace, they fill anywhere between 1,500 and 2,500 barrels. That means in order to keep up, the cooperage has to make an average of 2,000 barrels a day. That is a lot of barrels and a lot of whiskey. In fact, as of the filming of this video, Buffalo Trace had just filled their 9 millionth barrel since Prohibition. Once inside the barrels, the White Dog is handed off to the oak and char to give it flavor and its classic color. This beautiful marriage between liquor and wood is a process that can't be rushed. Each of the over 2 million barrels currently at Buffalo Trace will sit and age for a minimum of 4 years, while some barrels have been aging for well over 20, until that glorious day when the barrel is finally ready to be drained. Barrels are pulled from the warehouse depending on the mash bill. Different mash bills require different aging. In the emptying warehouse, the bungs are drilled from the holes and metal tubes are put in place to help the whiskey flow from the barrel. After the barrel is empty, it's filled with a small amount of water and the bung is replaced. That water will slosh around, cleaning the last remaining drops from inside the barrel. This water will eventually be used to dilute the barrel-proof whiskey to its drinking level. Then all the whiskey is bottled, packaged, and ready to be shipped out all over the world for you to enjoy. Whiskey, after all, is meant to be drank. It's meant to be shared with friends. And at Buffalo Trace, that tradition of friendship and family is obvious everywhere you look.
But what becomes of a used barrel? You see, for bourbon to be bourbon, it has to be aged in a new oak barrel, which means once they drain that barrel, they can't reuse it, at least not at this distillery. Now, a lot of the good barrels are sold off to other distilleries to make things like scotch or aged beer, even wine. But every once in a while, there's a barrel that just isn't in good enough shape to be sold. So what becomes of those barrels? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's my favorite part of the story.
If you come to the Buffalo Trace Distillery, you might find John Hartman in Warehouse J. hard at work making things out of old, used barrels. You see, at Buffalo Trace, they're all about telling the story of the whiskey. And the biggest part of that story starts with the barrel. So it seemed fitting that it also should end with the barrel. When a barrel is too old to be reused, it doesn't get thrown away. It comes here, to be turned into things like these muddlers, each one hand-turned on a lathe in Warehouse J of the distillery. You can also purchase these custom barrel heads. Or, if you're lucky enough, you might be able to stop and listen to Art playing one of his custom cigar box guitars. Each of these one-of-a-kind pieces of art has a barrel stave for a neck that first must be bent back to straight. Whiskey Woodcraft was founded in 2022, and they quickly outgrew their small space in Warehouse J, so they set up another larger shop on the distillery property, where you might find Matt working on their custom barrelhead project. You can order one of these custom barrelheads to pretty much say anything you want. I was lucky enough to get 2 of them with our logo on it to hang in the wood shop. But beyond cigar box guitars, muddlers, and barrelheads, they're also hard at work making fine pieces of furniture. This is Colin working on a custom whiskey barrel-inspired coffee table. Colin is a true master of his craft and has fully embraced the challenges that come along with building out of old barrels. I wasn't in the shop long before Colin put me to work. And of course, he had me do all the sanding. Where the heck is Craig? Like any woodworking, it all starts with a tree, growing straight and tall in a forest somewhere. That tree is harvested and milled up to be used as a barrel. That barrel is created at a factory a few hours away, then trucked to a place where they're making delicious whiskey. Once inside, that whiskey is aged for years, drained, and that barrel gets a new life. Maybe as a piece in your own living room, maybe as a keepsake muddler you can take home from the gift shop. The important part is that the people at Whiskey Woodcraft are giving new life to these used barrels, and it's pretty cool to see the process.
Whiskey and woodworking. 2 of my favorite things. Who knew there was actually a place in the world that was putting those together into one? Whiskey Woodcraft is making some incredible things out of old barrels. And the really cool thing is that this coffee table right here that you saw them building in their shop is actually going to be raffled off for charity. There's a link in the video description where you can buy a raffle ticket for a chance to win this very table. And all the proceeds go to the Katz-Moses Woodworkers with Disabilities Fund. So if you want a chance to win this beautiful table, make sure you check the link in the video description or just go over to kmtools.com and you'll find it over there. Huge thanks to Buffalo Trace for allowing us to come invade their space and film this video. Told you. You got to the road, man. No, it didn't. There's branches on the road. How's that filming phone? I don't know. I took it out.